So I just found out that my voice was so weird with that microphone. You guys never told me that. You have to tell me that thing. So it was so weird. I hope this is loud enough, or you just increase your volume. But my voice was so weird in the other one, I couldn't hear it. So let's get into FMEA. So FMEA, as I told you before, is a method that it's used to understand the root causes of problems and plan solutions, and understand what are the most important X variables, and it goes from something qualitative to something more quantitative. That's the big goal of it, right? So get rid of all the discussions and losing time, not have evidence of what is important, to actually quantify and observe and show some concrete data that is less subjective. Okay. So it's called failure mode and fact analysis. As you know, problems have a bunch of different things, right? Identify which input variables, X variables, are going to affect Y most or more frequently. Is a structure approach where we're going to prioritize them at the end, right? And have a control plan. So again, the structure is we have 100 different X variables that might impact. We drill down into process map and cause and effect matrix, and then we get to FMEA, where we kind of reduce this to a few, and then we can have some qualitative other analysis to reduce it to even less of them, right? But the drilling down, that's the important part of the FMEA. You want to prioritize, you want to have everything documented, and it's a living document. So things change, you implement things move around. So we're going to have to list a bunch of failures that can happen, but things, the process can change, and then you have to keep that as a living, breathing document that you have to update it, okay? Inputs here, you can use the cause and effect matrix. We learned about process maps, experience, technical. In capstone projects, what we do process mapping, swim lanes. We get a lot of failures there. We do interviews with the specialists and people that work. We get a lot of failures there as well. And when to use what, right? So usually what I do in capstone projects, I use, I think most frequently, a cause and effect diagram. My projects this semester have 2 that are using cause and effect diagram. And FMEA is usually when I have more than one Y variables, or there are multiple things that are measurements that will impact your process that you want to take a look at. So when it's just one, you can have one fishbone. It kind of helps you well. If the process is big, you have a lot of different causes. Maybe this strategy looks a little better. So what you want to prioritize those causes we have and control those actions that you're doing. So again, it's just coming from process map. You can use the cause and effect matrix to understand the most important ones, and then describe them in their effect with the FMEA, the X and Y variables. So it is a table, and you guys have an example of that table on Excel. You can download the Excel file with that comes with analyze phase, and you have an example of FMEA. We're gonna do examples as well, but first we need to understand kind of the broad picture, and it's a lot, I know, but we're gonna work with that. Okay, so hang in there. So I have a lot of different columns. What is the input or the step that you're looking at? And we're going to talk about failure mode, failure effect, cause, and controls, right? These things separately. So failure mode is what can go wrong. You have the failure effect. What is the effect of that thing if it goes wrong? We have the causes, so what caused that thing to get wrong? So that's the root cause. And the control, how do you find out or prevent that things from happening, okay? And then, of course, action is just, if you have an action for that, you can put it here. And then you have 3 columns that we're going to use for the qualitative analysis. So we're going to have scales that we develop so we can quantify those things, okay? So let's get into that. Let's say that I have a baking process. They have 4 steps. I assemble the ingredients, combine the ingredients, bake the cake, and serve it, the cake, right? And if you think about one of those processes, okay, the bake the cake, a lot of things can go wrong, right? So you can have a oven temperature can do something wrong, the time of the oven, the placement of the oven, the function burner, the energy supply. All of those things can impact these three Y variables: the cooked cake, the aroma, or the heat. So these are X variables, these are Y variables of that process, right? Let's say I did a cause and effect matrix before, and I found that out, right? So bake the cake, over temperature can impact these two Y variables here that we identify, which is taste and appearances, right? So then the FMEA will have the step-by-step of how to understand which ones are the most important ones, right? And we are starting with the first thing. And the first thing we need to do is identify the failure mode, okay? So what can go wrong? So here are some of the examples. Temperature was too high, the incorrect PO, surface contamination, dropped call, poor customer information. These are things that can be wrong. We're going to call them failures. The way specific inputs can fail, there are the failures, okay? So this is our process step, baking cake. We're looking at oven temperature and basically can be too high or too low. What are the effects of being too high and too low, right? So imagine that this is a row, right? And the oven temperature can be high or low, and high and low could be in different categories. That's why we still keep those blank spaces in the middle. So now we go to the effect. What is going to be the effect? Effect is what happens if that happens. What happens if the oven temperature is too high? What is the effect for our Y variable? Okay, so temperature is too high, we burn the cake. If it's incorrect PO, it will receive with errors. If the surface contamination, we have poor adhesion, whatever. Drop the call, the customer can be dissatisfied, right? So that's the effect of that failure happening. So in this case, you can ruin the cake. You can just keep a little bit too dry. If it's too low, it can collapse the cake, or you can undercook and be also bad, right? So these are the effects of that failure.